This is section 2 of chapter 1 for Geometry 11, Points, Lines, and Planes. These are concepts that you have definitely seen before in middle school. We're just going to go over them again this year just because you're going to be using them just about every day. So we got to make sure we review and make sure we understand exactly what these things are. Okay, so we're going to start with some descriptions of what points, lines, and rays are. A point is just a location and it doesn't have a size. You're going to name a point with one capital letter. So if we move forward in our slides real quick, there are a few locations on this slide. For example, Z, notice there's a little dot there that marks a location of where point Z lives. There's also a location for point R, Q, and P. Remember, points don't have sizes, so the size of that little dot does not indicate anything about the point because they don't have a size. If one point is bigger than the other, that's just by accident. It's just marking a location. Points don't have a size. So the 4 points that we see on this slide would be point P, point Q, point R, and point Z. And we would name those with one capital letter. Now, if you put a bunch of points together, you can make things. For example, you could make a line. A line extends without end in both directions, and it has an infinite number of points. So if we go back to that example, this figure that you see here with point P, point Q, and point R on it, that's a line. And remember, it said that lines have infinitely many points. So even though there's 3 points that are named on it, there's actually points that live in between point P and point Q. There's points that live in between point Q and point R, and the rest of the way down the line. So these arrowheads, they indicate that the line goes on forever in that direction. That's why there's infinitely many points. Now, all you have to do to name a line is to pick any 2 points from the line. So for example, this line could be named line PQ. So if we go back to where we would name a line in this part of the slide, in that middle row there, you could write it out, line AB or line PQ from that last example. The shorthand notation would be the 2 capital letters with a small little line above it that indicates that we're talking about a line. Notice how the arrowheads are there. Okay. Also, you could name a line with one letter, but it's not a capital letter because it's not a point. We go back to this example. Notice that little lowercase cursive italicized M. That's not a point because it's not capitalized. That's the name of the entire line. That's the collection of all of those points. So you could name this line right here on this slide, line M also. Okay, so that's what a line is. A ray is a part of a line. It's going to extend without end in one direction. It starts at a point and goes forever in the direction of another point. So if we take a look at this slide, here is a line. There are rays that live on this line. For example, if you start at point Q and you go forever in the direction of R, that would be a ray. We're starting at a point and going forever in one direction. You can go in any direction you want. Naming a ray is definitely trickier than naming a line. The order of the letters matters. So your endpoint must be the letter that you list first. So if we were talking about the ray that starts at Q and goes forever in the direction of R, that would be ray QR. So notice how they gave you an example here where we named ray CD. That's the ray that starts at point C and goes forever in the direction of D. The shorthand notation looks like this down here. you have the capital C and the capital D with a small ray above. Notice how the ray points to the right. When we use our shorthand notation, we're always going to point the arrowhead to the right, even if your actual ray moves to the left. That gets a little confusing. So let's take a look at this example again. Let's look at a different ray from this line. If we started at point Q but went to the left this time, this would be called ray QP because you're starting at point Q. Even though you're going to the left, we would name it ray QP, and we would put the Q first with the P second and the arrowhead pointing to the right, even though that ray went to the left. Okay, so these are what we call our building blocks of geometry. We have points. If you put points together, you can make lines. Parts of lines, like rays, exist, and we're going to talk about some other parts of lines as well. Okay, so let's go back to these examples. Number 1 says name 2 points on line M. Well, we know there's infinitely many points on that line. They want you to name 2 of them. How do you name a point? Use one letter. So pick one location from that line, like point R. That's an answer. Now they wanted 2 of them, so pick another one. Maybe pick point P. Now, somebody else may have said point Q. That's an acceptable answer also. Remember, there's infinitely many points there, but there's 3 possible answers since there's only 3 named points. What you don't want to do is say that point Z is on that line, because it isn't. It's kind of over here by himself. Okay, now number 2 says give 3 names for the line. So this is where things get a little confusing because this is only one line, but you can name it so many different ways. For example, when you name a line, you use 2 points from the line, so pick any 2 you want. For example, you could name this line PQ. It's the line that goes through point P and goes through point Q. Now, you could have also named it line QR because R is on that same line. Or if you wanted to, you could reverse the letters. You could name it line RQ. Or you could have named it line QP. Okay, another possibility would be line PR because again, both of those points are on the line. So that's how you would name it. Make sure you know how it would look when you write it. So again, look in this middle row here where it talks about naming the line. How would you name it? Well, you would put the P and the Q capital letters beside each other with a small line with arrowheads above it. That's shorthand notation for naming line PQ. This will probably be the last slide for this portion of the video. We're going to look at 2 definitions. The first one is collinear. What that means is points that are on the same line. So if you look at this line, you can definitely see points that are on that line. Those would be collinear points. Pretty simple. So point X, point Y, and point Z, name each of those with one letter, are collinear points. Where this gets tricky, though, is if you look at point X and point W, are they collinear? A lot of people would probably say, no, they're not collinear. They're not connected with a line. But they are collinear because you could connect them with a line. So even though they're not connected, if they could be connected, those points are considered collinear. So point X and point W, definitely collinear. What about point Z and point V? Would they be collinear? Yeah, you could connect them with a line. Okay, we're going to talk about this more as we go, but any 2 points that you pick are collinear. That's a geometric fact. It's 3 or more points that you have to watch out for. So look at point X, point W, and point Y. Are those 3 points collinear? Can you connect them with a line? You can't. So those are called non-collinear points. Those are points that are not on the same line. Just keep in mind, any 2 points can be connected with a line, so they would be collinear. Okay, so that'll be part 1 for our section 2 on chapter 1, points, lines, and planes. If you guys have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out.